Hi, my name is Charlotte Jones, and I am the Programs and Operations Manager at the 1811 Kid Ory Historic House in LaPlace, Louisiana. The museum is in St. John the Baptist Parish on a site most commonly known as the Untitled Plantation or the Woodland Plantation. So today I'm going to present a neighborhood profile on some of the interesting histories behind LaPlace, which is the accumulation of the Woodland Plantation and other former smaller plantation sites, and a third one known as the LaPlace Plantation. Believe it or not, it is not just some suburb that magically appeared on US 61, more commonly known as Airline Highway. But let's go ahead and get started. Jumping back 300 years ago, this area became known as the Bonnie Carey Bend as a subsection of the Second German Coast. German settlers, at the urge of the French crown, began moving into the area as early as 1721 and grew many food products that fed the struggling colonial city of New Orleans. In 1793, the Spanish crown granted Commandant Manuel Andre a concession of land on the Bonnie Carey Bend. Due to the arpent system and convenient bend in the river, the concession fanned out and encompassed nearly 2,000 acres. The 1811 German Coast Uprising began on Andre's sugar plantation. The Andre plantation changed ownership multiple times, but it's worth pointing out the Hollingsworth tenure from 1839 to 1872. In 1858, Samuel Hollingsworth proposed building a road from Fernier Village to the back of the Woodland Plantation, and the state engineer suggested that a canal would be better suited. The canal was constructed, and later so was a parallel road, originally known as the Ory-Hammond Road, and today it is US 51, also known as Old Hammond Road, that happens to run right under I-55 all the way to Ponchatoula. If you follow this pink line on the map, you can actually see where one of the main thoroughfares of the Woodland Plantation actually turns into or leads to the Hollingsworth Canal. And you can actually, if you follow the end of the pink line, you can see where it still remains today. Now, a series of physical changes around the Bonnie Carey Bend in the mid to late 19th century essentially laid the foundation for LaPlace. First, crevasses just past the bend prevented growth and development in this area downriver for decades. However, the Yazoo and Mississippi Valley Railroad stepped in to assist with closing the crevasses, since it also affected their essential thoroughfare that ran right behind the back of the Woodland Plantation. But more importantly, a batcher began forming in 1853 at the bend. By 1881, a court ruled that the batcher had reached and attained a full and efficient elevation above the Mississippi River to be susceptible of private ownership. This batcher, along with Jefferson Road, that we more commonly refer to as River Road, became the core of historic LaPlace by the turn of the century. And if you look at the white circle there, that's the Woodland Plantation, and pretty much everything to the left of it, that kind of empty land, is the batcher. Now, additionally, around this time, the LaPlace family owned several plantations in the river parishes. This map shows what is likely their sugar house, possibly a lumber mill, along with tenant residences. The namesake of the town, Bastille LaPlace Sr., was a French pharmacist who made a name for himself in New Orleans, even though it was his son, Bastille Jr., a judge and state senator who lived on the plantation and became quite a local figure by the end of the 19th century. Now, William Chauf was a cotton merchant in New Orleans who owned the Woodland Plantation during this time. His brother oversaw operations, and it's really during this kind of period that we see a lot of significant changes to the area and also the earliest hints of a town forming. One of the most prominent examples happens to be the Woodland Quarters along Cardinal Street, which is parallel to today's Main Street in LaPlace. The neighborhood still retains its identity as the Woodland Quarters, And the snowball stand is arguably the best of all in LaPlace. Now, unfortunately, most of the tenant quarters have been lost or possibly moved to other parts of town. However, this building shown in the Historic Standing Structure Survey shows us that we at least have one surviving structure. The HSSS is an excellent resource for researching historic homes in your own community as well. You can usually find these online through the Louisiana Historic Preservation website, but you can also find hard paper copies at your local library quite often. Now, as you can see in the photo, the owners have altered and adapted the structure over time, but Hurricane Ida exposed some green boards, helping us pinpoint the authenticity of the structure. Green was a very common color at the turn of the century, not only in general as a paint choice, but very, very common on the Woodland Plantation. And this is one of those things I like to call a breadcrumb trail that has helped my research quite a bit. Now, similarly, there are a couple of Acadian and Creole cottages. This one happens to be just 2 doors down from the 1811 Kid Ory Historic House and has been identified through oral histories and through paperwork as a former overseer's residence. In 1898, the Ory brothers, along with Augustin Lassane and Leon Keller, bought the Woodland Plantation. John L. moved into the main house with his large family. John L. Ory, I should clarify. The Orys and Lassanes became stewards of the community for the next 2 decades. By 1914, 357 people lived in the area now known as LaPlace. Most of the activity could be found on River Road, also known today as West 5th Street. This thoroughfare has changed names many times. It is also on West 5th Street that we can find most of LaPlace's historic architecture today. Many of these Queen Anne style homes were built by John Pastoreau, a master carpenter, and his son Jules. The Pastoreaus also built the St. Joan of Arc Church on land donated by John L. Ory. And they were responsible, the Ory families were responsible for establishing permanent education, entertainment, and social aid to the area. And here are some examples, including the St. Joan of Arc Church. This is a post-Hurricane Ida photo, so I do apologize. It's looking a little rough, but they are rebuilding. The Woodman of the World Hall is no longer around. However, it became that kind of nucleus of entertainment in LaPlace at the turn of the century. And John L. Ory also donated land to build a school. The picture at the bottom is the current schoolhouse today. Now, it's also during this time that the Woodland Plantation leased and later sold land to Armand Montz, who opened an ice house and became a pioneer of frozen foods, including corn on the cob and okra. The Montz family became major employers of the area. You can often find some of their original housing, workers' housing around the area today. The Woodland Plantation was subdivided in 1923. The array of architecture in Old LaPlace, ranging from Louisiana vernacular styles to bungalows to Tudor revival cottages and ranch-style houses, exemplifies how much it grew after Woodland was subdivided. Airline Highway was completed in the 1930s, also stewarding a different type of growth of commercial architecture, which it embraced with open arms. Perhaps the best example of this is Airline Motors on US 61, just off of Cardinal Street. Now, unfortunately, many century-old buildings were damaged or destroyed by Hurricane Ida in 2021, reiterating how essential proper historic preservation planning is in communities such as LaPlace. However, not all is lost. Next time you're down Airline, take River Road for a bit to see some of historic LaPlace's hidden gems, and stop by the 1811 Kid Ory Historic House while you're here. And also be sure to check out our partner organization, Louisiana River Parishes, for additional history and itineraries. Again, my name is Charlotte Jones. I am the Director of Operations and Programming over at the 1811 Kid Ory Historic House, and thank you for your time.